Have you ever wondered what happens in her mind when the noise finally stops, when the messages fade, when the calls go unanswered and all that's left is silence? That silence, the one that once felt unbearable, starts to speak louder than any words ever could. At first, she might not even notice it. The world keeps her busy, distractions keep her occupied, and pride keeps her pretending that she's fine. But deep down, something begins to shift. The absence that she once thought she wanted starts to echo in places she didn't expect. Silence has a strange power. It forces reflection. It creates space for emotions that were once buried under arguments, attention, or routine. When you pull back, when you stop trying to prove your worth, something inside her begins to question what changed. The human mind is addicted to patterns. It craves familiarity. And when a pattern suddenly breaks, curiosity is triggered. That curiosity is the first spark of missing you. It's not love yet, not longing, just the faint realization that something valuable has gone quiet. You see, when you are constantly present, your words, your energy, your attention, she got used to them. They became background noise, not because you weren't enough, but because the human heart often overlooks what feels guaranteed. Attention, when given endlessly, loses its weight. But when it's withdrawn, when it's no longer freely available, its value multiplies. She starts to wonder where it went, not because she needs it, but because the silence now feels unnatural. It used to be filled with your presence, and now it's filled with questions. This is the stage most men fail to understand. They break the silence too soon. They panic, thinking silence means loss. But silence, when used with strength, becomes your greatest ally. It creates the contrast she needs to feel your absence fully. Every text you don't send, every call you resist, every moment you focus on your peace, it all adds weight to your presence. Because silence, when it comes from a man who's calm, confident, and grounded, doesn't sound like rejection. It sounds like power. That power draws her in. Slowly, subtly. Because what's missing now isn't noise. It's your energy, your stability, your emotional presence. When you stop chasing, she starts feeling. When you stop explaining, she starts remembering. When you stop proving, she starts realizing. The mind fills silence with meaning. And if your silence carries confidence instead of resentment, she begins to associate that silence with value. This is when she starts to feel something real. Not instant regret, not dramatic longing, but awareness. Awareness that your presence had depth. Awareness that what you gave wasn't ordinary. Awareness that peace felt different when it came from you. That's the power of silence. It doesn't demand attention, it earns it. So don't fear the quiet. Don't rush to fill it, let it work for you. Because while she's trying to understand why the silence feels heavier than your words ever did, you'll be doing something far more powerful. You'll be becoming the kind of man who doesn't need to chase to be remembered. Stay through the silence, because that's when the truth begins to surface. That's when missing you starts to mean something. And that's when she finally realizes what she took for granted. There's a point where your attention, once seen as affection, starts to feel like noise. It happens quietly, almost invisibly. You think you're showing love, but to her, it starts feeling like pressure. Every message, every call, every attempt to fix what's broken begins to lose meaning. Because what's abundant is rarely valued. When something is always available, it stops being special. The more you try to remind her of what you were, the more you remind her that she doesn't need to miss you. Human psychology is wired this way. We crave what we can't fully have. We're drawn to what creates uncertainty. When she knows you'll always be there, her emotional curiosity dies. The mystery fades. The attraction dulls. What once felt exciting becomes predictable. And predictability, no matter how loyal or kind, doesn't feed desire. That's why chasing never works. Because every time you chase, you reinforce one truth in her mind. You're replaceable. You're seeking her validation instead of embodying your own value. The moment you pull back, not out of anger but self-respect, something begins to shift. The noise stops. She no longer feels the constant pressure of your energy seeking hers. And that's when space appears. Space for curiosity, for questions, for emotional reflection. When you stop giving her everything, she begins to notice what it feels like to receive nothing. That's when the emotional balance changes. You're no longer reacting to her, she's reacting to your silence. That silence is your mirror. It reflects back everything she didn't see before. The stability you offered, the peace you carried, the certainty you gave. It all becomes clearer in your absence. But none of this happens if you keep reaching out. Because every time you do, you reset her emotional rhythm. You remind her she's still in control. And the more control she feels, the less she needs to value you. It's not about manipulation. It's about alignment. When you stop trying to convince her to see your worth, you begin to truly embody it. You become detached, not cold, not careless, but calm. You no longer need her attention to validate your existence. That shift changes everything. It's the kind of energy that commands respect without demanding it. And respect, not desire, is the foundation of true attraction. She'll notice the difference. At first, she might think you've moved on. She might assume you've lost interest. But deep inside, a subtle unease grows, because the human mind can't ignore a change in energy. When something that was once constant suddenly stops, the subconscious starts searching for it. It's in that search that missing begins. But for her to truly feel it, you must stay grounded. You must resist the pull to prove your worth again. Your silence only holds power when it comes from strength. Not bitterness, not revenge, strength. The kind that says, I know who I am, even without you. That's what separates the men who are remembered from those who are forgotten. It's not their charm. It's not their words. It's their ability to stay composed when everything inside them wants to reach out. Because composure is magnetic, control is rare, and silence, when born from strength, doesn't just make her wonder where you are, it makes her question why she ever let you go. There's a subtle moment when the quiet no longer feels peaceful to her, when the silence that once made her feel free begins to echo in uncomfortable ways. Now, at first she tells herself she's fine, that your absence doesn't matter, that she's moved on, but the human mind is never truly at peace with unfinished emotion. What's buried finds its way back, not through logic, but through feeling. That's when she begins to sense the space you once filled, not through words but through the contrast of what's missing now. It starts small, a song, a memory, a random thought. She brushes it off, but something in her energy changes. Because even when people don't consciously miss you, their subconscious does. The human brain stores emotional patterns, and when one of those patterns is suddenly broken, it begins to crave the stability it lost. You were part of her emotional rhythm, your voice, your presence, your energy. And when all of that disappears, the silence doesn't just belong to you anymore, it becomes part of her world too. She begins to wonder where you are, not just physically but mentally. Did you really let go? Did you stop caring? Are you thinking about her, or did she truly lose her place in your mind? Those questions come not from pride, but from uncertainty. And uncertainty is powerful. It stirs curiosity, and curiosity is the seed of missing someone. The truth is, missing doesn't start when you leave. It starts when your absence finally feels real, when she realizes your energy isn't reaching out anymore, when she sees you're no longer waiting in the shadows, no longer orbiting her attention. That's when the weight of your silence begins to settle. Because people don't miss what's gone. They miss what's no longer available but still holds meaning. And if your presence carried real value, that realization hits deep. This is the stage where most men unknowingly regain their power, not by doing more, but by doing nothing, by letting time and silence do what words never could, because silence exposes truth. It reveals what was real and what was temporary. If what you shared was genuine, she'll feel the absence of your energy more than the presence of anyone new. Emotional connections don't disappear. They fade only when both people stop feeding them. And the moment you stopped chasing, you stopped feeding the illusion. That's when she begins to feel the difference. Don't mistake her quiet for indifference. People process emotion in silence before they act on it. When she doesn't reach out, it doesn't mean she doesn't care. It often means she's feeling something she can't yet express. Pride, confusion, regret, they all mix together. And while she's sorting through that, you must hold your line. Because if you break that silence too soon, you interrupt her reflection. You take away her chance to truly feel what life is like without you. Every moment you stay silent, every second you focus on yourself, her mind adjusts to a new reality. A reality where your energy isn't guaranteed. And that reality begins to hurt. That's the first true sign that she's starting to miss you. Not because of what you do, but because of what you've become, calm, certain, and beyond her control. The more you stay grounded in that energy, the louder your silence becomes in her world. There's a shift that happens quietly, almost invisibly. The thoughts that once passed through her mind without weight begin to linger. What was once simple curiosity, wondering where you went, what you're doing, starts to evolve into something deeper. Curiosity turns into longing. It's not immediate, and it's not dramatic. It's slow, subtle, and psychological. It's the human mind reacting to uncertainty. Because what the brain cannot predict, it starts to obsess over. And when you become unpredictable, when your silence holds mystery instead of desperation, she begins to feel that pull. The mind is wired to seek resolution. When someone withdraws suddenly and calmly without anger, it leaves an emotional gap that demands answers. She'll start replaying memories, searching for signs, looking for clues. Not because she wants to go back in time, but because she's trying to understand something that no longer fits her assumptions. The man she thought she could read is no longer easy to read. The attention she once expected now feels rare. That rarity creates desire, because the human heart always chases what it fears losing forever. This is where your silence transforms into presence. You're not texting, you're not explaining, you're not posting for validation, yet somehow your energy begins to fill her thoughts. That's the paradox of detachment. The less you try to be remembered, the more unforgettable you become. When she feels the distance, but senses your calm, something inside her begins to stir. It's not about ego anymore, it's emotional dissonance. The part of her that took your presence for granted starts to fight the part that wonders if she made a mistake. That battle grows stronger when she notices that you're not waiting, when she realizes your energy has changed. Maybe she hears about your focus, your discipline, your peace. Maybe she feels it through silence alone. The point isn't what she sees, it's what she feels when she realizes you're no longer emotionally available. Desire doesn't come from proximity, it comes from uncertainty and admiration. When she sees you've evolved into someone who doesn't need her validation to stand tall, she starts to see your worth differently. Her emotions begin to contradict her logic. Her mind says she's fine, but her body reacts differently. A song hits harder, a memory flashes stronger, the smallest thing that reminds her of you feels amplified. That's not coincidence, that's the emotional withdrawal of connection. When dopamine once came from your attention, and now it's gone, her brain starts craving it again. But this time, it's not because you're giving it, it's because you've stopped. That's the power of emotional detachment. It doesn't come from pretending you don't care. It comes from truly being at peace with what you can't control. When your focus turns inward, when your energy is no longer tied to her reaction, something inside her shifts. The same silence that once felt like loss now feels like strength. And strength is magnetic, so don't rush the process. Let her curiosity evolve naturally. Let time do what force never could. Because attraction reborn from silence is deeper than attraction built on attention. When she starts wondering why she misses your calm more than your words, that's when the longing becomes real. And that's when the balance of power changes. Not because you took it, but because she finally feels the weight of what she lost. There comes a moment when silence no longer defines distance. It defines transformation. She begins to see glimpses of a different version of you, not through your words, but through your energy. The man she once knew is no longer the same. The one who sought her approval has become the one who no longer needs it. That shift unsettles her, because growth has a sound, and even in silence it's loud. It vibrates through the spaces where your old self used to exist. It's not anger, it's not indifference, it's evolution. As you begin to rebuild yourself piece by piece, she feels the change before she understands it. Confidence has a frequency the human mind can sense. It's in the way you carry yourself, the peace you exude, the calm you radiate. You stop reaching outward, and that inward focus creates gravity. She starts to wonder where that peace comes from, why you seem more whole without her than you ever were with her. That thought unsettles her pride, but it also awakens something deeper: respect. People are drawn to progress. The human brain is wired to notice improvement because growth signals value. When she sees you rising, not in a showy way, but through quiet discipline, through your actions, through the aura of calm that replaces chaos, something inside her starts to shift. She remembers the man she left behind, but now she's confronted with someone new, someone stronger, sharper, more centered. This comparison isn't about ego, it's about emotional recalibration. She starts to reevaluate what she thought she knew about you. You're no longer a man waiting to be chosen. You've become the man who chooses himself. That shift in dynamic is powerful. It rewires attraction at its core, because when someone senses that you no longer seek validation, their validation instinctively seeks you. Your self-respect becomes a mirror that reflects back what she lost sight of, your worth, and in that mirror, she doesn't just see you differently, she starts to see herself differently too. What once felt familiar now feels distant, and distance creates intrigue. She wonders what changed you, what gave you that edge, that calm, that unbothered focus. It's not that she suddenly falls back in love. It's that she feels drawn to understand what made her stop being your center. The human ego resists being forgotten, and when you no longer orbit her, she starts to crave the gravity she once took for granted. But your goal isn't to pull her back. It's to rise so completely that you no longer need to. The true power of transformation isn't that she sees it, it's that you feel it. You start to understand that your energy, your focus, your peace were never meant to revolve around someone else's recognition. They were meant to build the kind of man who can stand alone, complete and grounded. That energy can't be faked. It's earned through silence, through discipline, through choosing growth over reaction. And when that transformation becomes real, she feels it deeply. Not because you told her to, but because your presence now carries weight. You no longer chase validation. You attract it naturally. You've become what's rare, a man who found strength in stillness, who turned loss into clarity, who turned pain into power. That's when the tables truly turn. Not because she misses who you were, but because she can't ignore who you've become. Pride is a fragile thing. It convinces people they're fine without you, that they've moved on, that walking away was strength. But pride begins to crumble the moment reality stops feeding it. When she sees you calm, centered, and thriving, that pride turns into quiet unrest. It's not instant regret. It's the slow awareness that her assumptions no longer fit the person you've become. The same silence she once believed meant defeat now looks like mastery. The same distance she thought was weakness now radiates power. And when pride meets undeniable growth, it starts to collapse under the weight of truth. Regret doesn't hit like lightning, it creeps in like a shadow. It begins when she realizes the man she expected to wait has stopped waiting. When the version of you she left behind no longer exists, she feels something she can't explain. That's the moment when the emotional power shifts. You're no longer defined by her decision. She's defined by her loss. It's not about revenge or validation. It's about the natural order of self-worth restoring itself. The energy that once chased is now unshakably still. The attention that was once overflowing is now scarce and valuable. And nothing haunts the human mind more than realizing value only after it's no longer accessible. This is where pride begins to turn into reflection. She starts to remember, not out of nostalgia, but out of recognition. Every small thing you did that once went unnoticed now holds new meaning. Every calm response, every act of patience, every time you showed up with quiet strength, it all starts to surface. The contrast between who you were and who you've become creates emotional friction, and that friction becomes the spark that reignites awareness. But here's what truly makes this moment powerful. You're not waiting for it. You're not counting days, checking signs, or hoping for validation. You're too focused on your path, too grounded in your growth, too at peace with the idea that life moves forward. That's what breaks her pride entirely. Because when you stop needing her acknowledgement, you remove her power to define your worth. And that absence of need, that emotional independence, is the most attractive energy a man can possess. Human psychology runs on contrast. When someone expects you to stay low and you rise, when they expect you to chase and you detach, when they expect weakness and find strength, it rewires their perception completely. That's what triggers the emotional reversal. Pride can't survive against evidence of growth. It's a quiet defeat. She won't always say it out loud, but she'll feel it in every silent thought that lingers when she sees you at peace. What once felt like control to her now feels like loss, because control only exists when the other person reacts. When you stop reacting, control dissolves. That's when she starts to feel the weight of what she gave up. Not just the relationship, but the emotional security, the presence, the grounding energy you brought into her life. The irony is, she only sees your value clearly when she can no longer reach it. So stay calm, stay grounded. Don't let ego or temptation pull you back into the old pattern. Let her pride unravel on its own. Let your peace do the talking. Because the man who doesn't chase, the man who holds his silence with purpose, becomes the mirror that exposes every false belief she once held. And in that mirror, she won't just see you differently, she'll finally see herself with clarity. Patience becomes your greatest weapon when emotion demands reaction. The world teaches you to prove, to explain, to chase what's slipping away. But true strength lies in restraint, the ability to hold silence when everything in you wants to speak. That kind of discipline builds an aura that no words can match. Because patience isn't passive, it's powerful. It shows emotional control, self-mastery, and belief in your own worth. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding the illusion that someone else holds your peace. And that's when real power begins. She'll feel that patience long before she understands it. The absence of reaction confuses her. It breaks the pattern she expected. People anticipate emotion, not control. They expect you to plead, to fight for attention, to prove your care through chaos. But when you stay composed, you're teaching her something she never learned from anyone else. How to feel your worth without hearing it. Silence becomes your teacher, and patience becomes your statement. You're no longer speaking her language of validation, you're speaking the language of self-respect. This kind of energy unsettles people. It's not normal in a world built on instant gratification. When she reaches out subtly, testing your reaction, and you remain grounded, it challenges her assumptions. It makes her wonder if you truly moved on, or if you've finally grown into the man she couldn't see before. Every moment you hold your center, you rewrite her memory of you. Because what once felt like attachment now looks like strength. What once looked like waiting now looks like evolution. Tests will come disguised as casual moments. A message out of nowhere, a sudden show of interest, a question meant to draw emotion from you. But those are not invitations, they're measurements. She's trying to see if the silence that made her miss you was real or just temporary. She wants to know if your growth is consistent or just a phase. Your reaction will define everything. One moment of weakness can erase weeks of self-control. That's why patience is not just a virtue, it's a boundary. It tells the world, I don't chase validation, I create it within myself. Emotional power is not about dominance, it's about balance. It's the ability to stand in stillness when chaos invites you in. When you remain calm, you're not suppressing emotion, you're mastering it. That mastery sends a signal that she can't ignore, because emotional stability is rare, and what's rare becomes valuable. The less you need to prove, the more powerful your presence becomes. You become a reflection of peace in a world that feeds on reaction. And peace draws curiosity. It makes people want to understand how you became so untouchable. She begins to see that your silence wasn't punishment. It was evolution. Your patience wasn't weakness, it was wisdom. Every moment you stayed calm was another step toward reclaiming your emotional independence. That's the kind of presence no one forgets. Not because it demands attention, but because it commands it naturally. The man who learns to master his emotions becomes the one who defines the energy in every room he enters. And when she finally feels that shift, when she realizes her tests no longer reach you, that's when she begins to see what true strength looks like. It's not in the chase, it's in the calm. It's not in what you say, it's in what you no longer need to explain. There comes a point where silence no longer feels like distance, it feels like clarity. The space between you stops being a battlefield and becomes a mirror. She begins to see what your presence truly meant. The energy you once gave freely is now something she must earn, and that realization hits harder than any words could. Because missing someone isn't just about wanting them back, it's about recognizing the peace they brought into your life after it's gone. When she finally starts to miss you for real, it's not because you disappeared, it's because you grew. By now she's compared everything that came after you, and nothing carries the same weight. Every new conversation feels shallow, every new connection lacks depth. Because you left an emotional imprint, an energy she didn't fully value until it wasn't there to depend on. That's when the memories start to change shape. They stop being random flashes of the past and start becoming proof of what she lost. Your silence becomes louder than any apology, more powerful than any attempt to explain. Because it's not what you said that lingers, it's how you made her feel without needing to say anything at all. That's when missing you becomes real. It's not impulsive or dramatic. It's quiet and persistent. It shows up in moments she can't control, in her thoughts before sleep, in her silence after a conversation that doesn't feel right, in the absence of a peace that once came from your presence. It's the kind of missing that comes with humility, not pride. The kind that makes her realize that love isn't found in words, it's found in energy, in safety, in calmness, in the kind of stability you once gave effortlessly. But now, you've evolved beyond needing her recognition to validate that. You've learned that real love begins with self-respect. You've understood that peace isn't something you beg to keep. It's something you build and protect. The moment you stopped chasing her, you stopped losing yourself. You learned that your silence is not emptiness, it's strength in its purest form. And that strength changes everything. When she finally feels the full weight of your absence, you won't need to remind her of who you were. Your growth will do it for you. The man who once reached for her is now walking his own path with purpose. The man who once needed her approval now walks with his own validation. That's when your silence becomes undeniable evidence of transformation. She doesn't miss the man she left, she misses the man you became. And that's the kind of longing that doesn't fade easily. But the truth is, your goal was never to make her miss you. It was to become whole without her, to find peace so deep that no rejection could shake it, to build strength so real that it no longer needs to prove itself. When you reach that level of inner power, you realize that the one who truly wins isn't the one who's missed. It's the one who grows so much that being missed becomes inevitable. Let her feel the silence. Let her wonder where that calm came from. Let her sit in the space where your presence used to be, and finally understand that your value was never in what you gave. It was in who you were. And now that you've become even more than that, the world, not just she, will start to feel your absence. Because a man who finds peace in silence becomes unforgettable, not because others remember him, but because his energy leaves an imprint that time can't erase. There's a moment when you stop waiting for someone to see your worth, and instead, you start living in it. That moment changes everything. It's quiet, but powerful. It doesn't need to be announced or proven. It simply radiates through how you move, how you speak, and how you no longer overextend yourself for temporary attention. You begin to understand that your value was never dependent on who stayed or who walked away. It was always there, buried beneath layers of doubt, waiting for you to stop searching outward and finally look inward. That realization isn't loud. It's a calm awakening that humbles you and empowers you all at once. You start seeing how peace feels better than attention, how silence feels stronger than validation, how presence feels deeper when it's not desperate. The energy you used to give away carelessly now flows back into you, and suddenly, everything around you begins to shift. You stop attracting chaos because chaos no longer feels like home. You stop chasing love because love no longer feels like something to prove. You stop apologizing for being too much because now you see you were only too much for those who were too little. You begin to carry yourself differently, not because you're trying to impress anyone, but because you've learned that real confidence doesn't chase, it attracts. This is where true transformation begins. When you detach from needing to be chosen, you become free to choose yourself. You stop replaying conversations in your head, trying to understand where you went wrong, because you finally understand you didn't go wrong. You simply outgrew the version of you that settled for less than what your spirit deserved. That growth doesn't come with noise or anger. It comes with clarity. It's the kind of clarity that makes you smile at the same situations that once broke you. Because now, instead of trying to be understood, you're simply at peace with being misunderstood. You've made peace with not being everyone's cup of tea. Because the truth is, not everyone is meant to taste your depth. And as your energy rises, you start to notice something. People begin to feel it. The same ones who overlooked you start to glance back. The ones who took your calm for weakness now sense your power. Because nothing is more magnetic than someone who's at peace with themselves. Your silence starts speaking for you. Your presence becomes heavier, more grounded, more certain. You don't have to prove your worth anymore because it's already felt. It's written in your energy, in the way you move, in the way you no longer rush what's meant to flow naturally. You've become someone who doesn't chase, someone who embodies what others crave but can't quite define. That's the power of transformation. It's not about revenge, it's about evolution. It's not about making them regret losing you. It's about becoming so aligned with yourself that regret has no space in your heart. You stop measuring your value by how others treat you and start measuring it by how deeply you respect yourself. And when that respect becomes unshakable, you realize that nothing external can make or break you. You've already won, not because you proved them wrong, but because you proved yourself right. And now, every silence you hold, every boundary you honor, every moment you choose peace over attention, it all builds a new version of you, one that no longer fears loss, because you've already found the one thing that truly matters, yourself. And when a man reaches that level of inner strength, he stops waiting for life to give him meaning. He becomes the meaning.